alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
What at the church, though?
Tawali man, what's up?
Man, can you imagine people just dump everywhere? Someone drinks water and throws the bottle wherever.
Come on, Rogers. What else do you expect people to do with an empty bottle?
Simanya now, recorder. Do you know that plastics take at least 450 years to decompose?
What? That's a long time.
Exactly. Because plastics are made out of a lightweight and flexible material that doesn't decompose easily. And plastics everywhere in the environment cause plastic pollution.
What is plastic pollution now?
It is the accumulation of plastic waste in the environment, like bottles, polythene bags, straws. All of these contribute to plastic pollution.
I have been using them without knowing their effect.
Yeah, a lot of people have. Plastics are a danger to the ecosystem, both on land and in water.
So how can we overcome this problem? Is there something we can do?
Oh yes, we can reduce by minimizing the use of plastics, reuse by repurposing them, or recycle by collecting and processing them into new products.
Everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change themselves for the world.
How about we change our habits for the world?
And it starts with me and you.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk. The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to today's edition of the Hotline. My name is Roger Sturiabwe, and yet again, it's another day to learn from our dear panelist, a gentleman who most of these days is with us on Mondays. He decided to dedicate his Mondays to making sure that he teaches us what it means to build a nation. For someone who has been in different countries, he has certainly been exposed to a lot of these things, but also the fact that he has been in the political spaces of this particular country for quite some time now, it gives him a position and authority to speak about most of the issues that are happening in and around our community. So today we're going to be doing just that yet again, and I'm going to invite him to introduce himself, and we'll mostly about the constitutional reform and you know, of course, the constitutional commission, the constitutional reform, the thing. And transition that everyone is speaking of seems to be singing here and there. How are we, first of all, prepared to do that? And how are we working towards making sure that that actually happens, more than just singing about it day and night? So you're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Say hello to our viewers.
Good evening, viewers. I normally don't do the formalities like this because my camera experience is slightly different. But no, my name is Joseph Ochieno. A pleasure to be here. I am delighted that you were able to give me this piece and that you found that it was useful for me to be here with you most Mondays. I, yes, deliberately committed myself to being here, but I'm not sure whether it's about teaching, but it's rather to share my lived experiences, to share some of my rather strong views on some of the global issues and some of the national issues. And I think it is it's your fault during a break, just as we're coming on air, we're having a conversation, weren't we, about questions of ideology, questions of politics and politicians, questions of political convictions. And I was telling you that actually a part of the challenges around this world is that we have people in politics rather than politicians. And I was telling you that actually politicians are very decent people. Politicians are not selfish. Politicians are not thieves. Politicians are not liars. Politicians will not shortchange the community, and particularly politicians of the progressive left. And I'm talking about politicians generally, but politicians who are driven by values. They're people who are convictionist, driven by certain sets of values. They clearly believe that those values are the world view of how they would see society function and operate. So they go out of their way to, if you like, to express those, to explain those, to persuade the globe, to persuade the population, in this case, therefore, then to persuade the broader population. And when they have a critical number, in which case it's either simple majority or minor majority, but ideally in this case, a majority of opinion, public opinion, in that nation state, where there is a democracy, and if it's a democracy, that is, the majority in a freely open and democratic way vote for those values, through those particular individuals, but vote for those values. And once they've voted for those values, those then become policies and programs translated in polity. Yes. Those politicians in questions then will seek to translate their convictions into realities of the life. So their worldviews, as I said, for all those of us from the left, we believe that everybody should have access to clean water. We believe that everybody should have access to free medical care. However it is paid, we can discuss that. Everybody else should have a right and opportunity to education. Everybody else should have a right to free and clean, neat environment. Everybody else should have the right and mandate, I know it's an introduction, to determine who governs them. And once we do that, we express them how we do it, in this case in the UPC Council. So those becomes then the sets of values. Those are really politicians, as I was trying to tell people who are politicians. And in that case, if your view is not a majority, you don't impose it. No. But anyway, it's an introductory thing.
Yes, it was an interesting one, and I am glad you actually brought it back.
Yes.
I wanted to understand, must or should does politics necessarily have to move with power, or any one of them can work independently? I know
that is how you came in, and you were really boxing me on that. You possibly were getting a bit surprised that I was saying no. No, politics, you're absolutely right, it's about power. I'm sure Mr. Museveni is going to enjoy this. No, but Museveni is not a politician, he uses politics. So people who use politicians are said, translate the convictions and values into the day-to-day practice of the day, whether in this case, national government, as I said, view, or a local government in a particular way, or perhaps a convictionist lefties like myself. We live our experiences, including our families. We'll believe that our wives and children, meaning women, should be respected and treated in a particular way. People have some element of rights and freedoms. So this will normally be translated into our own daily lives. Now, because at the end of the day, and I'm not doing it from a political science point of view, I'm trying to make it very simplistic, it's these values that we want is part of our worldview. We persuade the majority of the people, go through a process, and then, of course, get power meeting, which is what you call the mandate of the people, to translate whatever our values into practice. So that then becomes power. So yes, they go side by side with power. But I think your original concern was that, politicians, all they want is power. No, politicians want to express their values and translate them into ability to enable the people. So that then is the power. So to me, the power is about delivering for the people, delivering and seeing the worldview of our society rather than control. The power thing within the context that we're trying to put, which is nuanced, is these guys who, me, I am powerful. Me, I'm not going anywhere. Me, I can send you the police, and me, I can box you. And you funny woman, what are you talking about? Telling your wife. That is crude power.
No, let me ask just a little more. Two things. One is now as we stand, do we still have an ideal political system across the world, and not just Uganda,
yes,
or in Africa? That's one. And then two, I want to understand the concept of the deep state and government, because now government seems to have that invisible hand that does make things happen. Is that now done by the political will, or is it something else I don't understand?
Deep states will tend to be self-interest. I'll start with those ones. And deep states, in some situations, of course, we can explain them in different ways. Deep states, if you possibly go to Italy, they'll talk about mafia. Yeah. And if you talk about Uganda, you might talk about deep state, which is cruder than mafia, but it's not mafia. But if you also talk about deep state in a very particular way, you'll find the guys who control backroom power in, say, Anglo-America, the Freemasons in Britain and in North America, how perhaps certain state intelligence do operate, like
Yes,
American
yes.
state intelligence services that will operate, that will possibly include this president. That is how far you can go. You cannot go. Those are, if you like, deep states. Now, interestingly, those deep states are actually, if you go to Anglo-America, they're actually relatively democratic to the extent that actually ideologically, those of us to the left who think that some of these deep states push and push interests of big capital at the expense of the majority, I would be opposed to it. But if it's from the point of view in which the national security is strategically that this is American national security interest, you will go to Uganda, you will relate with the Ugandan authorities and relate with the Ugandan peoples, but beyond a certain limit, American interest is checked, so you don't go beyond that. Neither here nor there. I would not blame them. It's up to us Ugandans to create situation in the system that we're able to control from a point of view. But a deep state, in the negative sense, when you go to the Gupta brothers in South Africa, where a group of funny Asians, families controlling trillions and billions of our South African monies that should go to enable the majority of the Africans in South Africa, and including all of the people in South Africa, including whites, including children of appetite crude criminals, but they're now South African citizens. That is unacceptable. And then if you come to places like ours here, when you reach a state in which Mr. Museveni is able to say to Betty Kambi, please don't touch those, don't touch them, the state can fall. So arguably, is it deep state or is it a family rule and there's some other system under it? I do not know. Interestingly, finally, there is this theory that fantastic lady, Princess Diana late, in Britain may have been murdered. The theory went around. Yes. And part of the theory was that she may have been murdered because she had fallen out with her husband. Her thinking was inconsistent with the royal family, and some views suggested that possibly because she had the relationship had ended with her husband and she was now dating an Asian, in fact an African, an Egyptian, and that's a Muslim. How dare you do go the step? So maybe she was, all those are theories. Put complete disclaimers. You're a lawyer, and I'm a fantastic lawyer, by the way. But most importantly, the argument was that she was distorting the royal narrative of global power, as it were. So she was going off. She was amongst the first people to go and campaign against landmines in Angola, which landmines in Angola were predominantly put there by Mr. Museveni's former friend UNITA and the Americans against the MPLA government in Angola, and people died in huge numbers. And so she stood for that. When matters of HIV and AIDS came, Princess Diana was there, dealing and doing business with the marginalized. A fantastically beautiful white woman, and here, hugging AIDS victims of all races, including Africans, and touching them. And you're a royal, so you're crossing the line. I just want. So, so she was becoming, to them, it was an inconvenience of 20 or 30 or so years ago. And so, is it good enough to say that she had to be stopped? Those are the theories. But why I'm leading you to, where I'm leading you to is this. Later, as many conversations came, now the late Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, actually said that, implied that there are dark forces that you don't know. It's just gone off my head now. I remembered it about a minute ago. Maybe I talked too much. But I said, there are forces beyond the open realm that you can't see. And so, is that deep state? I don't know. Like that, yeah. Before the deep state, your other first question was...
Yes, the first question before the deep state was, do we still have an ideal political system?
Ideal political system. So that is deep state. Versus, in my opinion, crude dictatorships. Families that are controlling political power around the world, including some democracies. They want to control them, but in democracies, neither here nor there. Families like...
Democracies are mostly in just our faces and the media. Doesn't exactly go to the ground in most of the societies.
Yes and no, and I'm coming to that. There's some nations which are relatively democratic. Families will have power and influence, or some mafia groups or some interest groups will push. It is argued, say in American, the NRA, NRA, the National Rifles Association. These are people who are about guns and power and military. They make lots of money, almost like so. They control polity. They sponsor political candidates. The big lobbyists, and one lobbying will discuss lobbying another time with you, because I find it's a concept substantially misused in our spaces here. So the control. Particular right-wing element of polity, and that's particularly not good. But at the end of the day, there are lobby groups that come and persuade politicians, in this case possibly legislators at parliamentary level, Senate, local council, council level, presidents in the state departments, the presidency, if Uganda is the president in Entebbe, who's genuine president, and then you go ahead and push to look, it's good for us to have these policies, it's good for our environment, it's good for long term. That is legitimate. Do we still have? Yes, we do. We still have convictionist leaders. I was telling you that some young guys called me Bernie Sanders. So they abused me because I'd hit my good age the other day. It was my birthday. And they said that I'm an old man like Bernie Sanders. But Bernie Sanders was good in the sense that they're saying that I'm a lefty but old man. So Bernie Sanders is a man in his 80s, but still the most passionate, anti-excess capital in America. That's a convictionist politician. The most passionate about the environment in America, the most passionate for ordinary workers, the most passionate about low wages, the most passionate about access to health,
and young
people. Healthcare, and he's followed by the majority of the young people in America. My good friend Jeremy Corbyn in Britain led the Labour Party, nearly led the Labour Party to 2 election victories in 2017 and 19, and he's to the left of the Labour Party. Now, actually, I have moved slightly to the left, in part because of him, because I wasn't really that left-wing until I realized that actually the right had something about this guy. One time I asked a friend of mine, I will not say on television, a senior British politician, about the time Ken Livingstone, who was then a mayor for London, since we were talking about discussing broader polity on this. This individual told me that, that guy is not a team player. I later learned that they actually just didn't like the man's politics because he's radically left-wing, And the guy went on to become the mayor for London as an independent. The Labour Party stood against the Labour Party candidate and defeated them. Blair realized that this guy is very, very popular. I'm telling you about politics and convictions. And he was readmitted to the Labour Party and then went to second term and won for the mayoral seat in London as a Labour candidate. So these are still convictionist people. Blair, you would argue, in many cases, most of him, to me, was substantial convictionist until he had this terrible thing about them and Bush and going to America. And now people think that possibly his interest is my majority Anglo-American right-wing thing rather than basically convictionist politics, in which case then is he really a politician from the left, but is someone from the center left. So values, politics generally driven by ideology and conviction. You can see the Indian Prime Minister Modi, a right-wing guy whom I don't really like because he's really to the extreme and he plays religion and class in India, but he's very much convictionist. He's the BJP party. He came from an extremist group 30 or so years. They've gained power and they've got hold on held on to India. But go to Brazil, the Lula, the current ruling party, of the Lulas and tell, those are convictionist leftist guys that transformed polity in that country. So I sort of can go on and on. I'm saying you push for this. Politics in Britain, for instance, right now, is going very much to the left again. Unfortunately, the current leader of the Labour Party is seen to be neither here nor there. By this, a former director of public prosecutions. So if it's Ugandan Director of Public Prosecutions, you know that you can also be president, in Uganda, but make sure that you do it properly. This business of hiding, but with thieves, you tell them that their PAs who are the problem rather than themselves. I think that is bad manners. But anyway, so the party generally is moving to that, but it's purging the left wing of the party. But what are the issues? The left in Britain, or the majority of the people in Britain, are saying water should be renationalized, electricity should be renationalized, energy generally should be electronationalized, meaning gas and electricity. The post office should be renationalized, railways should be renationalized. Most of public housing, which were built in the millions that UPC saw examples from. In fact, we learned some of our things from them and built public access housing here, what's called council housing. Council housing should be, building should be redoubled and effort and invest in it. And as I said, I told you this program here, they could now believe in a living wage rather than minimum wage. They pushed, the left pushed for free nursery schools for every child, 3 to 5 year olds as compulsory. That is now a matter of routine. So if you see some of those social issues, and then of course they believe in big higher tax, which is the point of structure, they'll believe that you pay slightly more. The rich pay higher tax, I mean the Sudiras of this world, Sudiras, who else?
Yes.
Museveni's family, I'm told, has got so many rich billionaires. so those rich guys who own really, some of the buildings that UPC built and
usually the 1%.
The so-called 1%. They should pay a reasonable amount of tax. And you know what? This is absolutely fair and open and decent. You pay a higher top end of income tax, and the lower end you remove the ceiling. Like as I said, I'm still answering you. There is absolutely no reason why somebody who's earning $1 million shillings or less should pay taxes in Uganda.
Any tax?
There is absolutely no reason. I'm just saying, former tax as part of employment. If you work for this television station and you earn C990, I'm suggesting there's no reason why I should pay any tax.
Any tax?
No, there's no reason, yes. My point is that is too low a threshold, for my opinion, to pay taxation. In Kenya and Tanzania, ours is about 250,000 shillings, meaning somebody earning 250,000 shillings, that is less than Mr. Museveni's cup of tea in a day, And that person, in the current state of bad public services, in the current state where they still have to go and pay medical, I know you, last week you're struggling here in the cold, and I discussed with that, I sympathize with you, I know you did not go to Mulago, did you?
I didn't go to Mulago.
And you did not go to any local health facility and get free treatment, did you?
Of course not free.
And you also did not know that there's free university education, did you?
I did not.
And I also want to say on this program, because I want to fundraise for you, I'm sorry for going personal here, that you're a fantastic lawyer and you need to go to LDC. Yes? Can I continue? Yeah?
I will go to
You go to LDC. But you did not know that LDC was free under UPC.
I did not know. In fact, I didn't know that the whole education system was free at all.
So then you realize, so if really all these things, people still have to go and pay, people on the lower tax threshold really should not be paying. And I'm saying a UPC government, particularly a UPC government in which I have a say or I'm a leader, that basically I'm telling you major policy issues here, I would put the threshold over and above the 200. Of course, now let's play the figures. Now, this is real politicians, because I don't want to be a president in 3 years' time and then you say, Ochieno, you said 800. No, realistically, less than 1 million shillings, people should not be paying some of these taxes. Realistically.
I think some.
I'll tell you what.
Some of the taxes can be fair, but Mr. Ochieno.
I'll just qualify because I know we need to move on this.
I actually want on that one, that very one.
Okay, go on.
You do suggest that at least for any person who has lesser than 1 million shillings, shouldn't be any taxes. Any is my point of emphasis. Now, any, and the way our current economic system is and works, is it really feasible? Can the economy work?
Yes.
Because the majority of the people you understand we have are the ones who actually get less than 1 million.
Yes.
How does it work?
You're a good man, and let me explain. I really don't believe that most people who earn less than 1 million shillings should be earning less than 1 million shillings. I don't believe so. Mr. Museveni knows. At the 60s rate, yeah, at the 60s rate, and even at the 80s rate up to 1985, before Museveni and DP forced their way into power, yeah, the average grade 2 teacher, grade 2, not grade 3, not diploma holder, their salaries at the time, to today's equivalent, and I'm no accountant, I will not go into that, will be almost certainly over and above the 1 million threshold. So I'm beginning to make you think. So this thing is not all about the amount of money, but it's about the pay scales and wage scale. I was shocked, by the way, talking to a lawyer. There's a young, beautiful lawyer who's a friend of mine, and she's a friend of mine and works at a law firm of a fantastic friend of mine too. They're great guys in town. I will not mention them because you might think that I'm advertising them, but they're really fantastic people. In the course of my conversation with her, and she's a fantastic lady, is when I came to know that actually lawyers, average young lawyers in town, do not get paid that very well at all.
Some are not paid at all.
And I must say that maybe these are one of the things that you big law firms in town who make trillions sometimes supporting some of these dubious failed businesses in town, And granted, your private businesses, which is not threatening you. I'm simply saying, no, I think we need to begin to remunerate people reasonably well. But from a public perspective, somebody who's a graduate, in most of the average jobs should not be earning less than 1 million shillings. So you see where I'm trying to go? So because all your mind is focused on how NRA has sunk you guys to a terrible low-wage economy, and it massively high tax economy for the few, instead of expanding the tax base, instead of making sure that these funny oligarchs pay their fair share of their taxes, instead of making sure that we create jobs, decent jobs, instead of making sure that we create possibilities in which we transform our primary products to processed, to make value addition, and create more jobs, and then create more wealth for our country, yeah? You do that so that you become less dependent on borrowed Chinese and Kenyan business money. Museveni has actually borrowed money from a Kenyan business. Ugandan government, Jesus, forgive me. It's terrible, So instead of doing that, so the more we do that, the more we'll have more people earning more and paying their fair share of the taxes. But most importantly, if we tax appropriately those who earn higher, at a higher rate, and if we make sure that we do the tax collections anyway, which is my last point, I know many people, and I'm sure in this program I'm going to have many people who are not going to be my friends, but I know they're good friends. They're going to say, taxes, Ochieno is talking about taxes. Pay taxes to who? For Museveni's fleet. Pay taxes for wood. Yeah, for Mabadi, that never arrived at Karamoja.
Most of them actually do.
Pay taxes for what? For medicine, that never arrived. That's absolutely the point. When people know that they're paying their fair share of the taxes, and that's what I was trying to say, you pay your fair share of the taxes, but your taxes go, the state, or indeed the local authority, in this case is the local council, the money that is collected, they deliver the services for which they're intended. In most developed countries, people don't have issues with this. And as I keep using Scandinavia. Scandinavian nations, and I have a family member in a major Scandinavian nation who's doing fantastic small business. You cannot get away with a penny, either euro or a krona or a pound or something like that.
Revenue.
No. The system is well integrated and clear. But the point is, you don't have to do it. It's morally wrong. By then, in this Uganda, when I was a boy like you, okay, a young man like you, yeah? To be a thief, to be a suspect in this country, Mr. Museveni, challenge me if I'm wrong. once upon a time in this country, if they know that in your family there's a pickpocket, your family is finished. I don't know whether you're married. You never, girls will never come in your home. You never get married. Just like if they know that you're somebody who kneels to go to some of these funny shrines, whatever, you will never get married. And if you're, however beautiful, and our camera lady, by this is a fantastic lady. She's my beautiful friend. She's, of course, she's not on air. And they know you will not get married. Boys will not come to you. If they know that in your family there's a thief, they will not come for you. This Uganda. Now that's the morality thing that we built as a country, as a government, and I'm proud as UPC. But I'm also saying, in Scandinavia, that's where they are. People are happy to pay their taxes. But people get high-class health, high-class education, high-class public service.
Maybe the reason why they're happy to pay the taxes in the first place is because they know there is value for the taxes they're going to pay.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the whole point.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Well,
so therefore, this convictionist thing I'm talking about is not a dogmatic chat of an evening. No, these are facts, real convictionist things. I saw them in this country. I see them and I've seen them around the world. They actually happen. And I know it's possible for us to have in this country. And just a quick one. Do you know in Uganda we either do this or we are going to be in trouble? I have relatives, as you know, I have relatives across this continent. Me, my blood is fine, So I've got relatives in Rwanda who are Banya Rwanda, in Rwanda. And one of my relatives from Rwanda, he hit 60 the other year. And he, Rwanda, Uganda, of course, And so the guy comes home and is now waiting for his pension. Here in Rwanda. From Kagame, who's a beneficiary of UPC good things, I'm telling you. Rwanda, here. And actually, the top echelons of Rwanda guys that people went with us to Mwiri, Kololo SS, or whatever country. Here in Uganda. By the way, did you know that?
Yeah.
Yes. Here. Some of them are people who looked after our cattle, but Banyarwanda, who grew up in Uganda, studied in Uganda, and some of them worked in Uganda, go to build Rwanda and to build a decent country. So in Rwanda, when your time has come, you know your time for patience. So if it can happen here in Rwanda, a country we enabled, why not in Uganda? And in Uganda, where it happened before. So I know you may be raising it much later. In Uganda, a situation in which soldiers, our boys and girls, die in Somalia. And Mr. Museveni coming, instead of saying a horrid country, Minister of Defense should resign, say, I'm told that these ones sent to their friends, their boyfriends and girlfriends, the ones who are promoted. They're sent to go and get dollars in Somalia. And then we realize some soldiers who die, there was a headline the other day, was it?
Yeah.
And
that the monies that were given to their families were also stolen from their accounts.
Now tell me that these are people that there is in this regime, that there are no people who need to be sent to Luziram, because I no longer believe in the death penalty. I no longer believe, But these are people who should be, should face the highest penalty this country can afford. By the way, possibly more than the people whom Museveni thinks are lesbians and gay people in their bedrooms. And I'm serious. Think about it.
This country, with all of that, of course we have seen now you've painted the whole idea of an ideal political system, what it should be run by.
A working political system,
a working political system, yes. One that is not entirely about the power and who wields what.
Yeah.
Does that reflect even in the, because most of the people, including you, have said that the biggest problem this country has ever had has been Museveni.
Oh, that is absolutely
which is fair. But even in the administration that Museveni has, and those who are in the opposition, of course, they are still in the same administration. Do you see any promise of any better service or any better approach than Museveni has to build now, looking towards a better working political system?
I don't understand your question.
No,
but
question,
if I do, I'm telling you no. I've told you that the biggest national crisis this country has had since independence is NRA, NRM with Museveni at the top. And the worst of this country has been a narrative built over the last 40 years. And the unfortunate thing about your question is you're asking whether there's a possibility of this country with Museveni at the helm in the future.
No, not necessarily. What I mean is that, do you see in the people, not Museveni,
Oh,
of course, the
Ugandan
people,
citizens?
the other leaders who are here.
In
not
NRA?
Not in the NRM, even in the opposition, let's say in the opposition. Do you see people who are capable of leading an ideal political system that is working, that you're talking
A
about?
good political system. Okay, I think it's a slightly different question. If you're asking me that in this country, do I have a view that there is someone who can do better than Museveni?
No, not, okay.
No, I know, I'm answering you.
Okay.
The absolute answer is, by the way, more than 100%. And Jesus, why did you give us Museveni 40 years ago? That's one. Number two, if part of what you're asking me is alternative leadership, by the way I've said, I told a recent, I don't know whether this program, but I told a major Ugandan television network within the last 1 week, I think it's actually a state-related television network, that actually I believe that change even from within NRA, not Muhoozi, but change even from within NRA will offer a fresh mind, a fresh perspective, a fresh energy. It would. That is actually change. It's not the change this country needs, but that's actually change. So meaning actually, if a change can emerge from within NRA, where a sense of fresh leadership emerges, away from Museveni and his cronies and his families, and these rather very arrogant, entitled guys, some of whom are basically liars that think that if they don't exist in State House tomorrow, the sun will not raise. No, the sun belongs to Jesus. No. That is actually a possibility that something better can possibly emerge. But it cannot be worse. I don't think there is a change that happens in that way, for which Museveni does not use his blackmail that is done since entire school, that I'm either with you or I'm boxing you, kind of stuff, I don't think there is anything that can be worse than Museveni, even from within NRM. Now, the broader, wide opposition, I think your question is so extremely unfair. To suggest that this wonderful big nation of 40 million Ugandans, I'm putting from the upper limit, doesn't have people, even outside UPC. I know UPC, we are the top, but even outside UPC, who are incapable of taking this country to a direction better than Museveni, if that's your question. That's very unfair.
No.
But no, by the way, there's hope. However, the final part of your question is, do I see at the moment people with the sets of visions and values to push this country in what you call the ideal direction I'm talking about?
Yes.
And I think that's a difficult question to me. You box me there. Because mine is sort of idealistic, to be fair. Mine is quite clearly an ideological perspective, and I talk as Ochieno from that point of view. So basically, my worldview is a UPC sets of values. And outside Uganda People's Congress, I do not know, but I've got guys who I respect. Kiza's message has been around, and his articulated set of values. It's neither here nor there. You can see I'm not supporting FDC, so but I recognize him. My good brother Gregory Mugisha Muntu. People say he's smart. He talks about building structures, but he's been building structures rather too long. I'm not quite sure where it's neither here nor there. And so my young brother Robert, quite energetic, he's a big mobilizer, that's how he reached where he is. I don't know his big agenda. So I'm being very open about these things, My brother Amuriat, if you meet him, he's a very formidable guy, the FDC person.
The FDC is doing very badly.
Well, but I'm telling you ask me in terms of individuals, or
Okay.
first of all, individuals rather than parties. So actually Patrick is a very organized, considered guy. How then is perceived, all these leaders are perceived in the media and in the countries, neither here. I'm telling you, these are my good citizens out there. Even in NRA, I have got fantastic,
Yeah, yeah, they
good
are
friends.
people. Yeah.
You know, I don't want to name them. In NRM, I'm not naming them because I don't want to put them in trouble, because from tomorrow Museveni will begin to say. So this country has good people. But generally, whoever those people are will be having something as a port to say that this is our position on national reconciliation, this is our position on national unity, this is our position on the Buganda question, this is our position on the Uganda question, this is our position on the East Africa question, this is a position on the wider identity issues, meaning racial issues. You see, I talk about it very freely. You see, people keep dodging it. You know, so for us in UPC, we have no contradictions. We're able to disagree with the Banyarwanda and simply say Banyarwanda part of us, and with evidence, you know, on specific issues. We're able to call Bazungu imperialists. You've just learned, and they are, and they're actually very extremely exploitative. In fact, Museveni uses them and they use Museveni. But as I said, the best of my good external friends down there are Bazungu. And as I said, for me, just tell you that I can actually have Jeremy Corbyn. I give him an opportunity to govern this country. Because he's a Muzungu whom I know is ideologically driven by a leftist view, who, if he governed Uganda, he would transform Uganda, would not take a penny for Anglo-America. He would not take it. Now, that I cannot talk about many leaders, including some people who today call themselves UPC, but in the evening they're doing something else.
And that's another question, actually.
You see?
But let's move away from all of this. The reason why I asked the last question is one. We have had a lot of, and I don't want to call people crusaders. You have seen a lot of people who have said, in the day, Museveni is this and this and that. This administration has done A, B, C, D bad things. That is why we are where we are. In the night, they are doing totally different things. In fact, given the same opportunities, they will do even worse. Yeah. So I wanted to understand if, in your lens, if you look at the political landscape as it is right now, does it show a promise that anyone could spring out and take in a direction that is out to be?
Such people are extremely dangerous, and I hope they don't emerge post Museveni. Have I given a quick answer?
But yeah, I think that is fair. Anyways, so let's move to the topic of the discussion of the day.
Yeah.
We are literally closing out on the first hour, but we have the second hour to talk about it. So you've heard the talk about the constitutional reform. You know, the whole Mao NRM thing was all about, I want to go and change things. So when he became the Minister of Constitutional Affairs, a lot of people have expected him to do that, to lead that, and he seems to be taking that direction. As to whether he's delivering on it.
I know somebody complained to me the other day that they're still waiting a phone call from him.
that is another point.
Yes.
But what first of all, I want to get your idea on what do you think about these proposals for the amendments, constitutional amendments? And first of all, on whether even that is possible, given the fact that most of the Constitutional Review Commission usually is selected by particular individuals in Parliament.
No, you know, I've given reasonable thought. I was a participant at the first mini public conference at Gold Coast Hotel. That
yes.
hotel, which is built on the marshes of the water, which is an environmental unfriendly, you know. So, but I was there, so I put up my hand that I contributed to climate change Dembako with my good brother Norbert. You know, he's extremely articulate. He's very persuasive. He's very funny. An intelligent young guy, and compared to Museveni, of course, but he's you know. So, so the arguments are very, very, very tempting, but they're actually almost close to irrelevant. To come to think of it, they're close to irrelevant because, as you absolutely said, in as long as we have the status quo, and in as long as the challenges Ugandans have had since UPC gave them return to multipartyism in 2005, the challenges that happened in the electoral systems were nothing to do with the constitution. I participated in 2 parliamentary elections. Both of them were rigged. And one of them, some senior army officer who's dead, camped in Tororo, almost basically to check Ochieno. And this official, by the way. I have also participated in another election in which some very senior lawyer candidate played with dollars, and I was simply saying that I just decided not to challenge because I was very tired at the end of the election process for by-elections. And then three, I also want to say that some of the challenges I've not met because I campaigned for over 30 years, meaning 20 years leading to return to multipartyism, because I completely believed that we wanted to use diplomatic, political, and legal means to change systems. And once that, instead of seeking to go to the bush, throw bombs, throw grenades, crash things into people's food, box each other. And I believed that that was actually possible, and there's more civil and civilized way to do things in this century. So I was quite convinced about that. And then I thought that if I've already done that, and I reach a stage in which I am so much provoked, the option is for me almost to go to the bush. The option for me is to also begin to throw stones. The option for me is to begin looking for extremists to associate with. And I said, no, the UPC way is this way. It's my job and our responsibility as Uganda People's Congress to build an alternative system for the majority of our people. And it's not about us, it's about the peoples. And so I stuck to this, make an important point. So looking back, these things about personalities and individuals involved in some of these processes. Some of these is a price being paid for a long, extended dictatorship. But most importantly, I think these things is really about the will of people in power and people in leadership. It's interesting because, as you know, in the last elections in which UPC convincingly won was 1980 general elections. And in those elections, it was alleged that UPC rigged. The only reason is because bad losers always say they never, they always say, so DP lost election, claims they rigged. Until tomorrow, they cannot tell you which constituency was rigged against them, And Museveni is even more cheekier. He won one seat out of 126, meaning 0.8% of the parliamentary seats. And they said because of that, because of rigging, it's not in government. So you can imagine the miracle from one seat,
to get him in
to about maybe 53. It would have taken to majority about 53. Was it 53? Yeah, unless, But really, he needed to win about 67 parliamentary seats. So clear is baseless. But one of the reasons they give was that the Electoral Commission was Obote's thing. Obote wasn't in power. The Electoral Commission was not composed by UPC. Okay? One. Number two, then they said that because Paul Mwanga was the chairman of the Military Commission, and Mwanga rigged on behalf of UPC. Not true. What Mwanga did was when DP was announcing alleged results that they're winning, DP guys were dancing in Kampala, and DP won Kampala predominantly, although Kampala East was a very interesting one. I got some DP guys actually from the north, from Acholi, who were talking about how they're voting their things for Jock Mulozi, So one parliamentary seat in Kampala was almost suddenly rigged against UPC, by the way. That was Agro Warriors parliamentary seat. But DP won the rest of Uganda convincingly. But actually the seats DP claimed to have won, say, like in northern Uganda, they didn't. For example, in Dr. Akena Pojok's parliamentary seat in Atiak, I think that was Gulu North or Gulu Northeast. DP said had won the elections. Commonwealth observers with the team down there found UPC was winning by nearly 90%, kind of stuff. So basically, but when this was happening, and remember, Museveni did not want elections. Just allow me to make this point. Okay. Museveni did not want elections because he doesn't believe in elections. Now we know him. Obote knew him at the time, but for him he was saying, there was still insecurity. So they were not for elections. But DP knew they were not going to win. And once it was established, but they also wanted to cause chaos. As you saw, they later caused chaos with Museveni in Luero and later with the Okellos. So, and that's bad business. Bad losers is very important, the early point to turn to people about values. Because people with convictions, I think I told you again before we came on air, that if I am a believer in a particular set of systems in society, and I'm consciously aware that I do not have a majority view in the country. I shouldn't impose it. Now, that's a genuine politician. You know, you wait for your phases. When that time comes at a critical mass. But it's your job to continue persuading people to gain the majority.
Yes.
So that is not usually easy, and I think the biggest issue in Africa, and I hope maybe I'm able to have more time to push this on the African perspective. It's a big weakness on this continent, having good winners and good winners and good losers at the same time. So, Paul Mwanga, who was chairman of the military commission, you know, knowing that the state is getting strange and ungovernable and announcements, things like that, he came on as the governing military lead. The presidency was the three-person presidency. But the military lead, with Museveni as his vice chairman, then issued a statement and said that the Electoral Commission should not issue results before clearing with him, things like that. Meaning they are now limiting declaration of results simply because DP was presenting it 7th. So basically, to try and avoid chaos. I think it was a system that sort of technically backfired on him and so like UPC, arguably, and I say so, and it was authoritative from UPC's perspective. And by the way, for information, you know, when you have watched this program on Mondays from 7 to 9 when I'm around, you know, trust me, very likely you'll get away with one new information, one new breaking through, you know, and I'll try my level best. Obote actually officially is reported to have been unhappy with Paul Mwanga. Now I'm saying the DP said, yeah, he says what was Mwanga working together. Yes, Mwanga was a UPC supporter. But Obote as president of Uganda People's Congress, and Obote as the president of the then winning political party, visionary knew this country, visionary knew the schemes of Museveni and DPs, but also knew the implications of a decision made by the chairman of the military commission and how Anglo-America and their media and all those people and the DPs and the Musevenis would pick something tiny and run with it.
Yeah.
So they picked, do you see why I had to go into this? So they picked onto Mwanga's statement and ran with it that Mwanga had usurped the power of the Electoral Commission and for that elections were rigged. I ask you, you're a young lawyer and a fantastic one as such, and the whole of the future of this country is in your hands. For me, I'm remaining with the equivalent of your age, and I return to Nagongera. The future of this country and the future of our beautiful camera lady are up there. It's absolutely in your interest that we set a foundation correct.
Yes.
Go and research and check which parliamentary constituency had its results changed as a result of the Mwanga statement declaration, which one had Mwanga instructed the Electoral Commission change results and change. There's none. Now ask that of Mr. Museveni's industrial area Electoral Commission. And me, I can tell you stories upon stories upon stories, including Soroti. So some of these things are neither here nor there. So what can I say? I am saying, unfortunately, where we have systems where people don't want to leave power, and where we have people who don't want to build institutions, and when we have people who need special sessions from Singaporean leaders about building nations and so to be able to build for the future, that you come set a foundation, whatever it is, and then you go and let go. That is the problem facing this country, Uganda. I just beg Mr. Museveni, please, Mzee, 40 years, such a... You know, staying in State House is such a privilege. By the way, pension for one day is just good to sort your LDC. You know, so it's such a privilege. So to rule this country for 40 years, to have all the privilege you've had, and to beat UPC people, and to cause death for UPC members in Luweero, in the north, and all these other things, and yet UPC is still saying we forgive you. That is such a privilege that Mr. Museveni should have his humility and review his position and say, look, I want to let go, let me let go. NRA guys, let's let go, and leave somebody else, meaning a group of ideas, alternative ideas to come and try this country. And then when how that happens, you and my camera lady, when you pick up this republic, you can actually build systems, alternative systems that work. By the way, final point. I met a senior member of NRA the other day, and he was a very generous guy. We met at a public space, a senior soldier actually, and we were talking about possibility of this country. And it's he himself who talked about Magufuli in Tanzania, that this guy came and changed Tanzania in 3 years.
Really?
So it's really from the leadership. That's always usually the narrative. Mr. Museveni can come today and simply say, you know, my Bazukuru, from today on, you know, it's bad manners to do this kind of, this country can turn around in weeks. And that's why I'm absolutely confident that in event and soon that the people of Uganda give us the opportunity to govern this country minus NRA, we shall turn it around. But we shall turn it around for everybody, and I mean everybody.
Let's first go for a very short commercial break. When we come back, I want us to understand again. I still wanted to get your perspective on the reforms and what is being proposed and how is that going to be working out, and you know who's going to spearhead the whole process, because people seem to be here and there on who should be leading this, and so we want to understand what do you think from your perspective this whole process can be, and then that will also unfold and see how we go with it. So let's go have a very short commercial break. We'll be right back.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues. Real talk.
Hi, Rogers. Can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes, it can. Although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be no more.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk.
Go to the church,
Tawali man, what's up?
Man, can you imagine people just dump everywhere? Someone drinks water and throws the bottle wherever.
Come on, Rogers. What else do you expect people to do with an empty bottle?
Simanya now, did you know that plastics take at least 450 years to decompose?
What? That's a long time.
Exactly. Because plastics are made out of a lightweight and flexible material that doesn't decompose easily. And plastics everywhere in the environment cause plastic pollution.
What is plastic pollution now?
It is the accumulation of plastic waste in the environment, like bottles, polythene bags, straws. All of these contribute to plastic pollution.
I have been using them without knowing their effect.
Yeah, a lot of people have. Plastics are a danger to the ecosystem, both on land and in water.
So how can we overcome this problem? Is there something we can do?
Oh yes, we can reduce by minimizing the use of plastics, reuse by repurposing them, or recycle by collecting and processing them into new products.
Everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change themselves for the world.
How about we change our habits for the world?
And it starts with me and you.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk.
Looking for a pair of shoes? Les Up Stores has a wide range of selection for unisex footwear. We have the best quality of all brands at pocket-friendly prices, and we make deliveries countrywide. Just place your order or reach us on 0772 08 0090. You can also check up at Les Up Stores on all our social media platforms. Les Up, craft your own footprints.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Welcome back from that short commercial break. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening yet again. My name is Roger Sturiabwe, and together with Mr. Ochieno Joseph, who is also our president of this, so you can imagine. I'm just having one-on-one with the future president. You're welcome back, and thank you so much, obviously, for being with us for the last 1 hour. It's been very great seeing you. A lot of you are watching. In the next hour, I wanted you to expound on this whole constitutional reforms that are being proposed, and whether you think there can be a collaboration between the opposition to make sure that this is, really pushed to a much better agenda, because they seem, I think they're predominantly the ones who have introduced the idea of the constitutional reforms, to also make sure that, some of the things, the status quo needs to change if we're trying to make sure that the transition is going to happen, or to even drive a discussion about the transition altogether. So just a little bit expansion on how do you see those proposed reforms, and how do you see the opposition as one, even away from the government and the current administration? How do you see the opposition working together to push this agenda to hold some more momentum than just a discussion and talks in corridors?
I possibly went round and round a bit, but it was deliberate. And the point is this, that, and when I took you to the 1980s, the emphasis point is that it's really possibly not about the constitutional situations. Oh. The major constitutional situation in the last 20 years was the repeal of NRA's Article 269 that banned political parties and allowed for, and so therefore, which is basically something we changed when the NRA's NRC did in 1986-87 under the legal notice number 1, I think. So we challenged this in 1989, the UPC. I was telling you, we're a very decent political party. We do not believe in pain on any individual. And then in 1993, the Supreme Court, I think at the time, whichever the highest court at the time, ruled that the ban on political parties was illegal and unlawful, but because the provisions under the NRA thing was temporary, so it was okay. We challenged that, and the final ruling came in November 17th, 2004, where the ruling was very definitive that the ban was both illegal and unconstitutional and should be repealed. And so parties came back, and you remember then we got ourselves as UPC re-registered in March 2005, and other political parties came. So FDC, NUP, and everybody else, they need to be able to thank us, and because we did. And even this thing called NRA, NRM, if it's a political party, because it was a regional movement thing, and I think if I'm president of UPC, I think I'll challenge this thing. Because really, NRA, NRM is UPM. But how Museveni abandoned his Uganda patriotic movement and played around Uganda, because he realized that if he was to go back to UPM, many people would DP and you would say, this UPM thing here, we're not going to go there.
There's only one person left in that party.
And then he said, look, let them go. For us, we shall remain in the movement, meaning making it easier for him to trade, because that's another strategy. So you realize that some of this, you see where I'm going. So it's not about the legalities sometimes, about some of these things, the constitutionality. but some of this is about basically strategy. So, Museveni is here. What specific changes need to have occurred that would have made Besigye not win elections 2001, even when parties were banned? What are these that happened in 2006? What happened in 2011, 2016, and 2021? Systematic. What really were these key critical things? Problem is people keep on looking for symptoms. So I tell people that come and join the fantastic Uganda People's Congress, rejoin the party so that we keep on building for the future. Then so, oh, it has no leader. You know, fair enough. At the moment we are struggling over leadership issues. Oh, but it's in bed with Museveni. So people pick one small thing and run with, rather than dealing with the fundamentals. I'm simply saying, join the values and come and become part of the leader. And Rogers, like you, how a wonderful thing. I would see you as president of the Uganda People's Congress in 15, 20 years' time, kind of stuff. But it's the part that you put and run with this, and you're part of the decision-making process and the reforming and things like that. So I'm not quite sure that what we need is a major constitutional reform. I think people are looking for how to defeat Museveni. But it's defeating Museveni at his own game. That's the problem. Museveni controls the army, controls the police, controls the entire of the intelligence agencies, controls the national treasure, and he controls it in a personal way, you know, and for him he doesn't shy about it, you know. And that sort of, and now he controls the broad national media. Mr. Museveni controls the broad national media. I was last at UPC more than 2 years ago, and you wonder that, you know, things, you know what I'm trying to say. You know, under UPC I'm not saying anything. I'm just trying to, I find it very strange that major things happen. And all the other global television networks, Mr. Ochieno, come to us or whatever. Could you spare us 4 minutes and talk to us or whatever? But UPC says, no, Ochieno's ideas are neither here nor there. So those are the, so Mr. Museveni controls this media. My view is that actually our energy should be focused on some of these kind of conversations. Mobilizing a critical mass of young Ugandans, expose NRA for what it is, provide hope and possibility for you young guys that this country is possible without Museveni. This country is possible post Museveni. And if you're political leaders like in UPC, what is it that we are providing you and my beautiful camera friend? You know? And I want her to see, because I know she's a powerful person. I will not go into some of the other details, but she'll almost certainly be a mother in the next 8 years. 8? You know, 8, 10 years. I'm just for argument's sake, you know? Okay. So then if she's going to be a mother at the time, or she may be a mother already, whatever the case, you know? What exactly is a UPC government of the future doing for her? She wants to see that her healthcare is guaranteed. Yeah. She wants to see that her maternity and antenatal clinics facilities will be accessed at a local facility. She wants to see that in the unlikely event that she wants to go private because she's posh, you know, she wants to go private, you know, that private healthcare will not exploit her because there is a regulatory framework by UPC government. But most importantly, and when her child turns 5, 6, he or she is able to go to the next primary school or nursery school beyond Shimoni or Buganda Road, and people like Royals, and they may, you know, she may know people know she wants to go near Bulange, things like that. And the state is catering for it, and it's possible. But she also wants to know that when she's able to live here, she wants to go and work in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Some of those ministries need to be reviewed, actually. Yeah, you know, because these are some of these things that are neither here nor old colonial. Ministry of maybe Public Service, you know, and Cabinet Affairs. There's a role and a possibility for her. And that is the UPC government, that she does not get stuck every time on Mukwano Road, you know, and how is it going to be done? So convince her that these things are possible, possibly done, possible, but not true that UPC can do it. And for us, we say we did it before, there's no reason why we don't even do it better going forward. Things like that. So I think when she does that and you do that, and a critical number of young Ugandans say, no, enough is enough, I genuinely believe that it's possible to change this country. I also believe that And I know we've got critical observers, some who may be watching today, from some of my colleagues, saying that, well, Ochieno, you're really, you're being utopian. That the more that happens, guys in NRA security will think twice. Senior guys in NRA security, when they know through public opinion polls, which is something I want to encourage you guys in the media need to do. Big media houses need to be able to do these things like Gallup, like Ipsos, like, we just need to create our own indigenous public opinion platforms which are accurate, plus or minus 3% poll. You go around and take public opinion, people say that, look, what is the possibility that the UPC will win in the next election? And then you get 37%, and then the other one, plus or minus. But also, what is the public opinion? What's the view of the majority of Ugandans when it comes to Uganda's involvement in Congo? And then they say 49% of Ugandans don't like it. Or actually, when they say 45% of Ugandans don't like it, a sensible government will say, no, look, there's a critical number of the opinion that are anti this thing, so it's not as popular as we think. So these things inform public policy. But my point is, so when we're able to do that, the majority of the population get involved, people get taken to elected positions, people begin to make sure that when we say soldiers should not appear at polling stations, really, for heaven's sake, why are Ugandan soldiers, NRA guys, why exactly are you guys at polling stations? Why? You claimed, your boss claimed that they went to the bush because of 1980. Me in Tororo, I never saw the army in 1980. In Nagongera, I didn't. By that, I didn't even see police at Nagongera polling station. And in 1980, I remember, in Mahanga Primary School, Mahanga Primary School actually, and Nagongera Town, there's no police. So why? So, beyond the police, so why? So, if we begin to ask these questions, soldiers stay in the barracks, and in fact, we say that we should not really see these guys even putting on their uniform, because these things scare people, because some of the blackmail thing. So the role of the security service in these things, and making sure that we have an independent electoral commission. Now, to go in those ones can be a bit of reform. But I even still believe that even without reforming, when there is public opinion, these good friends of ours in Uganda's electoral commission, who's the chief now? Is Simon Biamakama. Simon, yeah. People like, so these are Ugandans, and they look decent guys. Have you met him? We have met Simon. Simon is a good guy. By the way, Simon, I need to come for tea at the electoral commission. No, actually, seriously. So you sit and these are fair-looking Ugandans. But what is it that you can go ahead and begin to serve a dubious family for 40 years at the expense of the majority of Ugandans? But when the majority of Ugandans are saying no, Simon will know the burden of responsibility is given to me. Granted, I'm appointed by the president on the basis of the constitutional provisions, things like that, but I'm going to do the work. So these returning officers, now these days I go around the country, and then you find officers of the electoral register. So they make it so big as if it's, but just to confuse Ugandans that, oh, there's democracy. The other day I was talking to a young lady in Lango, and she said, oh, Mr. Museveni brought freedom of speech until we had another conversation. The young lady is now very traumatized, by the way. So I think, except, now I'm suggesting a reform, I'm going to round around a bit.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
The only one thing that I think urgently needs to be changed is that when you're a criminal, when you hold a criminal record, you should not stand for a public office. A future UPC government will legislate that when you hold a criminal record, you do not stand for LC1, LC3, LC5, certainly not Parliament, and for the Republic of Uganda's president, that coveted office, I know it's a very rare and available office, it's one person over 40 years, that you not step down there. Those are major things. I think these, in law, what do they call them? So these are mitigants that are important before people do take action, they think. Right now, somebody steals elections, Somehow the opponent is lucky enough to convince the judges, which is usually very difficult, convince the judges there's a by-election. And the funny thief is the first person again to be renominated. So this is a clear farce. But forget about the electoral processes. What is teaching my beautiful camera lady is that it's okay to steal and get away with it. So you realize even away from the electoral process, yes. So some of these are the changes I think that need to be done, let's say just basically taking the ammo. But away from this, I don't think in broad sense our challenge is constitutional reform. Our challenge, as my big brother Laro Tundu said, that as far as and as long as Mr. Museveni is in charge of the Republic of Uganda, it will continue to be his way. But then I ask, is electoral reform designed to deal with certain inherent things? No. The majority of the people seeking electoral reform, including myself, are seeking it because we're trying to find change in this country. Me, I'm saying as a political position, we need to mobilize and organize and begin to think about many other ways of greater awareness of up to 60% of Ugandans. Make them angry enough to know that iron thieves and shit thieves are the ones controlling the national pockets. And that iron shit thieves are the people who are directly responsible for them not getting access to health care. And that because of iron shit thieves, some of them are struggling to pay school fees. And that actually, if UPC paid school fees post-secondary, post-senior 4, and UPC paid university education, and I know they will go ahead and talk about this thing that, that time the population was small. Yes, the population was small, but you've been around for 40 years. Population grows at less than 2%. The economy grows an average over 6%. So, and Museveni the other day boasted that he multiplied the economy by 33%. If you multiply it by 33%, then rather by 33%, something like that. That's what then there is no reason why we do not cater for quality education for 33% multiplied for people in some of these services. And as I said at the beginning of the conversation, really that money, because asking where do you get the money? I'm sure somebody's asking, where do you get the money? No, the money is there. The money is there. Coffee, we made coffee the #1. UPC made coffee the #1 forex earner
now
in this country.
Literally every last one of it has lost value. No cooperatives, no market, no nothing.
Yes. So we made tourism the #2. So what do you need to buy for tourism? The Uganda hotels that we built, the Soroti Hotel, the Lira Hotel, the White Horse Inn in Kabal, and every other major nation town had public hotels. These guys came from the bush and rush. They were so hungry and thirsty. They sold it to themselves, all sorts of things to themselves. Build those are bases for foundations for tourism. So there's so much that can be done. And then, above all, stop borrowing to steal to build dubious malls. And then, of course, stop borrowing to steal our money to take your children, some of whom actually go to drink. Some of your children who go to drink, I know them. Some of them go to drink in Europe and North America on our money. Going to foreign universities, using our money. That's what these guys borrow money from. And above all, beyond that. So do efficiency saving, make sure that the money is spent properly, generally. And #2, make sure that you kill corruption. There will be enough money to do all these other things. And you do it, and you make sure that, okay, now I revise the figure downwards for these purposes, that minimally you earn 500,000 shillings, you don't pay any funny taxes. And just to conclude on those taxes, after all, every time you buy a liter of fuel, you pay tax. Every time you people who like gossiping, on phones, MTN, Airtel, all this kind of stuff, I'm not advertising those funny companies, you pay taxes. Yeah. Every time you buy your mobile phone from these shops, you pay taxes. Every time you go Uber, Safe Border, you pay taxes. And every time you go to a supermarket to buy just merely biscuits for your little children to go and bribe them to go to bed early, pay taxes. Those are taxes, monies. Uganda Revenue Authority just needs to be reformed. It just needs to be led not by NRA cadres from Chankwanzi, yeah, or people who go to funny churches by virtue of their special relationships to people, but for decent Ugandans with tax conscience and whatever, mobilize our resources, put them together, yes, and you know what? We shall collect this money. And guess what? A UPC government, we didn't even have Uganda Revenue Authorities. Some of these are just big names for nothing. You could even kill those ones, return these things to Minister of Finance, and you know, I can go on and on. Even Uganda National Roads Authority, apparently, there's discussions about it. I've got friends there, you know, some of these things. I'm not even sure. You know, you take this back to the Minister of Transport. We did that. We build aeroplanes, we build railways, we build roads, we put buses on the roads in Kampala, you know, through ministry.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
No, the truth is we need to actually reduce on the ministries. That I agree. But so literally in conclusion, you're trying to say that we do not necessarily need constitutional reforms.
We do, but it's not the most urgent. We do, but it's not the most urgent.
Okay.
And nor do we make it the big thing it is. And I think even some of these conferences that take place in those places, some of those monies should be used for, you know, you see, you've been online, you see some major people making adverts for, oh, you know, we are fundraising for so-and-so, they need this surgery for cancer. We're fundraising for so-and-so, this one, they're looking for their father and their mother, kind of stuff. Some of those monies would, and I want to come back, another pet thing of mine. Young man, today again I was coming to the studios, and by the today I left on time. They killed my time, but I came on time, and I managed to beat the NRA traffic. Do you know what? Those Karamoja street children, they break my heart. Yesterday I was with my grandson. My grandson is a fantastic young man, extremely clever young guy, you know, and I was now taking him to be ready for school. And we stopped at this place. This little kid is confused. He doesn't understand why children who look like 2, 3 and 1. I actually tried to take away his attention from all this other kind of stuff. Karamoja street children. Do you know that Mrs. Museveni was minister for Karamoja?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's a Mulokele, not so.
Yeah, she is.
And she took
And the daughter.
yeah, and they took there Claire Short. Claire Short is my former friend in the Labour Party, but we're not very good friends. She had a different view about Museveni and his ways of thinking, and I'm saying so in a good way, by the way. So these are people who, neither here nor there, since we're talking political reforms. No, people use our names and they use our countries for personal gains, and those are it's screwed. So, do we need ministry for Karamoja? What is it doing? Do we need ministry for northern Uganda? What is it doing? Do we need minister for Teso? That's what it's doing. I wanted to use ministry for Luwero. Do we need ministry for Luwero? Why? I think the people for Luwero need to begin asking questions. Luwero, you need to help us ask questions. Minister for Luwero, the other day I was talking to somebody. By the way, I was talking to a young lady from Luwero, just to conclude. I was talking to a young lady from Luwero who had done her A-levels, and I wish her well. And she's waiting for her results, and she's working at a local car wash. And she talked about how her father told her that Mr. Museveni brought peace, and now there's free education. So even those poor people there, she said, even those poor people somewhere in Wobulenzi can go to school. I didn't argue with her. It was late in the evening, and I was just trying to drop her off together with a friend of mine, and I proceed. And I chose the next time I passed there, I needed to remind her. So she said, those people now can go to school. She forgot that the leader of opposition went to school built by UPC and found 300 kids in Luwero, and most of the children have no future. So no. There's something happening in this country.
So let's first move out from that. We did the point about the constitutional reforms. I think it's okay. To a good extent, I think I agree, because it may not necessarily be the biggest thing, because it can even be controlled anyway.
Yeah.
The commission that is supposed to do the review, most of it is elected by the current administration. So it could still be bending on one side, so it may not exactly achieve what the goal.
I really didn't want to go there because I didn't want to make it as if it's, so pessimistic and very much enary. It's not about enary bashing, but these are facts. Those are exactly the point you make. So it doesn't matter at the moment. That's why I told you when I was hinting to you that today's electoral commission can say no. And by the way, again, officially, I know somebody who resigned from the Electoral Commission. I know somebody who resigned from the Electoral Commission. And by the way, I don't know how much. I know somebody who resigned from the Electoral Commission because they had been instructed by one or two top senior bosses who gets orders from funny above somewhere, to alter some figures about something. And the individual in Jesus' name said no. And when it became enough and enough, the person said no. The person's a fantastic citizen. Because actually there's some decent citizens in this country. So said no. So no, these guys, the Electoral Commission, as I said, maybe as I'm trying to tell them, that if Museveni went to the bushes in Luweero for a silly, unfounded, silly in a good way, because people don't get, sometimes people misunderstand that word, unfounded way, founded allegations about election rigging. Mr. Museveni should know that Ugandans can also get angry enough and go to the bush. But we simply say that no. For those of us who are leaders of opposition and leaders of this country, and those of us who love this country, we believe we love it more than Museveni. So in other words, we're prepared to do anything else away from our politics. We are saying that you do not need to push people that far. Let's do things that are able to help us build bridges as a nation. So leaders at the Electoral Commission, my good brother in the police, going public on him for the first time, Kotho Chola. He's a very decent guy by there, with the police chief. I think should go slightly loud and make sure that police officers should not abuse the uniform. Because the police does not represent the Okotho Chola I know kind of stuff. And then the guys in the security service, in the army. And then, as I said, the rest of the other public servants, whether the Minister of Public Service, people in public offices, should just wake up and re-examine their conscience, say we need to change this country. It's possible. The problem is it needs to start from the top. It needs an example, a leader. I still cry for that, Milton.
And speaking of leaders, I wanted to also ask you about this. You have seen the people who are the leaders now in the opposition, most of them now doing cooperation, signing agreements, crossing line. Even those who do not cross, they want to feel like, I am doing a partnership with the government, one leg in, one leg out. How is that going to work? How is that giving us a direction to a better Uganda?
I know you were itching for that. I was trying to avoid that. I was trying to talk more so that we do not touch that.
I wanted because it's a thing that most of us are looking at.
No.
It's a thing that most people are saying that is happening. And that is why a lot of people no longer trust in the opposition. Because here and there, two steps, one is in, one is out. Even in the UPC itself, where you come from. How do we now have a future?
You're really
this kind of
You're really trying to abuse me.
No, I'm not abusing you.
No, it's a crisis. There's a young lawyer, and I asked her to review her position. There's a young lawyer with whom we're good friends. I had only met her once at a burial somewhere in northern Uganda. And we hadn't even met, but we've been exchanging. She's a friend to another close friend of mine elsewhere outside the country. This lady is extremely progressive. Her values and beliefs are very close to UPC. Once Norbert Mao did his thing with Museveni, she sent me a note and said, Joseph, if Norbert Mao can do what he has done, I don't trust anybody else in the opposition. In part because she's of slightly older generation than you. So these are people who looked up to the Maos of the Guild times and the early stages and genuinely thought these are smart guys, which they are. But so therefore believed them substantially. I noticed then that lady took such a strong position. I think this is a good example that, you know, like sometimes when I come to your show here, you send me a clip and I share it with some of my friends who may not have watched. And so do I with the number of other networks who kindly sometimes host me. And one time she told me that, but what is it that you're discussing? Oh, one time she told me that, what are you discussing with these people also? I sent a flyer, as I would normally share with people. And I said, what are you discussing with these people also in that panel? She was completely convinced that the people with whom I was going to sit in the same panel were going to buy my thinking because she doesn't trust them. And I was saying that this is actually serious. And she went on. So another time I sent her a clip, and she told me she doesn't have time for these things. So it's very, very dangerous at the point you raise, to the extent, therefore, that people who are playing with the lives of the people of this country by using political parties and politics as fodder for their pockets should review their conscience. That lady, I don't want to talk about her background because I know some of her social background and everything else, has really every reason to feel betrayed because she wants democracy, she wants change, she wants most of what every other Ugandan would want. That you finish law school, you go and work, you get your job, legal and practice with the private and otherwise. But as you get the kind of things we're trying to talk about, you get ordinary services, you want to travel up country, you want to go to Ntungamo, you get your bus, or indeed in this case you take a bus, you train, or you drive your car. And that you have a particular issue in Kampala, you can go to law enforcement, they're able to sort you. You've got a small thing, I've got a case in court at the moment, it's now 2 years. I've got a case in court. And so things like that, and it's not being resolved, people lose hope and expectations. Now, for people like that, you radicalize them. Now, the problem is, for her who is very consciously churched, somebody who's very politically aware, to begin to say that she's no longer going to be watching this kind of programs, she's no longer going to be engaging with some of the things that we do, and that for sometimes some of the very serious things, and I take these programs very seriously, that I'm invited by global networks, or indeed I'm invited by other national networks, and sometimes we wake up at 4 rushing there to go there to try and share with the country, and perhaps give hope to younger people about possibilities of the future. But there is somebody who's saying you're wasting time. Yeah. Then you say, what then is the alternative? So, therefore, Norbert move, very disappointing. The only thing I respect Norbert Mao about is that at least recently he came open. He came open, whatever they did in DP, that's a matter for them as a Democratic Party. So I don't know the details, I don't know how the structures work. But they went there, and it's a bit of a thing with DP, but I know DP guys don't agree. If you ask my opinion, even if DP voted, but I know DP has been with Museveni since the Bush days anyway, I would suggest strongly that the timing was bad. But however, we know that Norbert had a soft spot and soft relation with these guys for a long time. That has been said. So that is Norbert. Now, in UPC, Beta Mongi had her special deals with Museveni. But Betty was dancing with these guys for many years before. I don't know to go some other details. So she knows her own things. But Betty is there because if I was a UPC leader today, I would seek to withdraw the whip from her. Because she did that without the mandate of the National Council of the UPC and certainly not the Delegates Conference. And if they did it as a party, even as a party cabinet, there's a grouping of people who sat, but that is a group between her and her husband and some kissmakers that are within the deal, whatever the case. So that is their thing. Now, but even Betty, sometimes you might find that Betty has gone to do Museveni's cabinet. Neither here nor there. She calls it building the bridges. It's quite irritating. But the more irritating thing is my brother Jim Akena, who pretends and refuses. And yet we know he's officially there. Ubot is looking from heaven and saying, is this, yeah? You know what I'm saying? It is actually terrible for UPC. It is terrible for democracy. It is terrible for this country. And particularly for someone like Jimmy, I think the burden of responsibility is bigger with him than possibly with Norbert. Because Jimmy is Obote's son. Obote is the father of this country. Yeah. Obote is the most revered citizen of this country. And for a very long time, even as Museveni and others were bashing UPC, people knew UPC as a convictionist political party, part of values, part of leadership. And we are the party of, not of tummy. You see, I don't have big tummy, you see? Mm-hmm. We are the party that is not driven by self-interest. We are the party that what we do for the people, not for ourselves. So therefore, the perception that even in UPC, there are people who are prepared to crawl at night to go and eat from the national coffers, but informally. Because all our money, whatever they're eating with Museveni is all our money, but they're eating it informally. It is not only bad manners, but it presents UPC in a very bad light. But does not only present UPC in a bad light, you're absolutely right, presents opposition in a very bad light. But doesn't only do that, but it presents politics, which is generally a misunderstood concept. That's why you and I were having an early conversation in a very bad light. So people begin to look at politics as a game of liars, a game of thieves, a game of themselves, a game of, and even those guys will play like mafia. They pretend like, and I know you're going there, they pretend that they're boxing each other, but at night they're busy kissing or they're sharing certain other things. So therefore, in Uganda, now it has been presented that some political leaders, have special deals. It has even been suggested some political parties and organizations are creations by NRA. They've been suggesting that some political opposition leaders represent NRA interests in their political organizations. Now, the more you do that, I think, Rogers, I find it very hard that beyond you and your camera lady, who are sufficiently politically conscious, I'm very proud of you guys, that many of them, the younger guys looking and watching tonight, will be saying, should they waste time? I'm telling you, young guys, no, it's not a waste of time. There is no alternative. And by the alternative is worse. The worst alternative is for you to sit back in Tungamo, to sit back in Mulanda, to sit back in Tororo, to sit back in Maliri, to sit back in Kamdini, and say and do nothing. Museveni is entrenching himself, his son, his family, emptying our national coffers. Whether you like it or not, your children and children's children will have to pay for that. Now the problem is, the longer this takes, the harder it becomes us pulling off from the pit. I was discussing national budget the other day and just looked at the projections for some of these debt things, that the burden of that for the budgetary thing moving from about 40-something trillion to 80 trillion over a period of 4 years. And then you ask, but where does this money go and what is it done? So really, you young Ugandans, you're not going anywhere. Some of you guys are lucky, you've got a new country. Some of you, Kenya is your deputy country. South Sudan is your deputy country. Congo is a bit deputy country. And Rwanda is your deputy country. Some of you guys got open visa to UK for whenever the air tickets, whatever. Sort of, you're okay. Me, I have not citizenship. I have an open visa to UK. I'm a resident. I refused British citizenship. I'm telling you another breaking news. I refused British citizenship as a matter of principle. But I will discuss that another time. And so I can go in and out. But no, my only country is the Republic of Uganda. And my only home is Nagongera. So I am not prepared to allow anybody to come and throw junk on this republic and to throw junk in Nagongera, where I have children, fantastic children. I've got grandchildren, and some of my other children and young and many others are coming. I reject that. Now, for me, who actually is relatively able to come and have this conversation with you on this program, I'm still that concerned. The majority of the young people, especially watching, their names are not known. If they tell you that they want to come to this program, you tell them that they're crazy. Some of them don't have a voice, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And yet, some of them are yet to get degrees. Some of them are yet to get their first jobs. Some of them are yet to know what a CV is. Some of them are yet to know what a referees are. Some of them, they're looking for their primary six teacher to become their referee. For me now, I'm asking a president to be my referee or a professor. Professors are my referee. You know what I'm trying to say? Meaning we've arrived there. But I'm still saying what I'm getting in this country is wrong. No. The answer is most of the young citizens of this country getting more involved in politics rather than less. Now, getting much more involved to get to know politics on issues, ideological politics, and to begin to ask, what does UPC represent? What does NUP represent? What does FDC represent? Who are their leaders and where did they come from? This Republic of Uganda, what is its biggest challenge? How do we solve it? In diversity. Who else gets involved? Those are fundamental questions the citizens of this country, the youngsters of this country need to get involved. And when we know, yes, we are in a hole where NRA has sunk us in a dead hole, and we're in a hole where our identity question means that we are now much more tribally divided and tribally suspicious of each other, and people are looking for their own republic. I think there's a kingdom looking for itself in Bunyoro, and some people are saying that maybe let us build the Nile Republic in the north, which became a big thing when Olanya died. Somehow Museveni is very lucky to die down a bit, but it's not gone, you know? So young Ugandans need to be able to mobilize and come together and do the thing that we did in the 60s, where, do you know what? Children left Roshoroza in Kabale and went and studied in Moroto High School. Secondary school, senior one. Children left Nagongira, you know, and went to Stara School. Children left Busembatia and went to Chigezi College. You know,
That's true.
you know, teachers, when I started primary one, the primary teacher who was just about leaving, she came from West Nile. You know, so Uganda in diversity, that happened before. That's the Uganda we need tomorrow. Particularly the Uganda we need tomorrow in which, as I said, Bernie Sanders and Jeremy Corbyn are good examples of the leftist politics. Jeremy Corbyn would come and distract Kampala and the Minister for Transport, and then they reorganize transportation system here very, very quickly. Because the leftist views about transport and infrastructure would turn around Kampala overnight. All we need is money, and that money would find it through West.
There's a number of comments, but most of them are appreciative. But there's this long one. I think let me just read this one. Thank you, our Father, as a senior citizen, for the word of wisdom. My question or concern is about you and the council, Wadubiri. Failure to reclaim the party leadership even when the courts of law pronounce itself over the leadership question. If intelligent people like you have failed to save the party, you can do that better in times where Museveni is ready to destroy every living and breathing being.
No, I think that's very unfortunate, and you might have thought it was a very difficult question for me, but it's actually a sad question, and I thank you very much for that question. This is the background. I have done my best, and I can assure you I'm doing my best, and I can assure you I'll do the best in the future, and I can assure you I have a burden of responsibility to report to Milton about in heaven about this party and about this country. And that's not negotiable. By the way, that's another breaking news. For me, I've got a responsibility to report to heaven, meaning heaven, when I say heaven, therefore mean including Bwana Jesus. So everything I do, I'll try to do my level best to mobilize, and that's why my engagement with young people like yourselves, I don't engage with people on the basis of parties. I'd like most of you guys to join UPC, but I just basically want to believe that this country's youth should be the power and the powerhouse of the tomorrow, and they should do so responsibly, and they should not be shortchanged by anybody here locally or elsewhere. So as far as the leadership that you say talking about is true, Court of Appeal ruled in 2020 September. Through partly my instigation, actually, I used my Sunday Monitor column to write to challenge the judiciary that had held back an appeal, Akena's appeal case from January 2016 to Now it was 2020 and people were preparing for the next elections and we hadn't resolved a leader. And Walubiri had a faction, Akena had a faction. I just want to put another disclaimer here, which I've said, I'm told people on television and elsewhere, thankfully me as Ochieno, I am too big for the factions. I don't belong to a political party faction anywhere, not even the Labour Party, and I don't belong to party faction UPC, and I'm too big for a faction in UPC. I represent Uganda People's Congress and the values as founded by the Musevenis, by the Botis and others before us. Values of Uganda People's Congress, and as UPC that I want is the UPC that as amended today to benefit posterity. And as amended today, consistent with the current changing positions in the world in terms of policies and values and ideologies and everything else. That's what I do. So, 2020, when the Court of Appeal ruled that definitively Akena is not party leader, meaning dismissing his appeal, and asked that the party should hold fresh elections. So that's very important. That the party should hold fresh elections and to elect a new leader. Once the party put out the notice, I decided, I was recovering my life out of a tragedy somewhere abroad with my little kid, and I said, no, I come in and out to do these things, I think we need to be able to get more serious. So I said, no. Akena and Walubiri are now two very toxic individuals in the party, toxic faces in the party, I think toxic ideas in the party. Akena's toxic idea is actually he's being in bed with Museveni, which is an open thing, against the will of the majority of party members. And Walubiri is neither here nor there, I don't comment too much. So let me put my name in the ring. At the time, Akena had indicated he was not going to stand for that election. And Walubiri was there. So I decided to offer a new face, new sets of ideas, new direction, and the conviction is commitment to bring the party together in the event that I'm elected leader. Once my name went through, I left my job and returned home to Uganda. And I started mobilizing and organizing and going around the country and listening to members. I did. So elections took place, I'll cut it short, in December 2020. And I won the majority. I won over 300 delegates. I've got my figures. To Walubiri is just under 200. Walubiri, it is, fudge these things. Walubiri, my friend Hamza Sewankambu, who was the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Ishoto, who's Walubiri's Secretary General, Tomo Minu, who's his smart operatives in their corner, meaning temporary office in Mabirizi House, fudge figures, played numbers, and did all the kind of, went around, wrote people's names and things like that. I know one big national lawyer who did not participate in the election, his signature was part forged, and I can go on and on, kind of stuff. So these guys did this very atrocious thing to deny my victory. Then they changed around figures and said Walubiri won 278, and that I got 271. So Walubiri allegedly defeated by 7 votes. Part of the background is this, that there are 2 districts where district chairpersons did not participate in the elections. And this is an election by resolution because during COVID times. So if district chairperson did not participate in elections, who called the district elections? In both of those districts, I've got one of them, I think, one of them withdrew, I think, through a kind of playing game, whatever. But I've got the affidavits. One particular district, the women leader allegedly voted, but she was already a member of NRM. In fact, she was already campaigning as a women councillor in a particular district. In fact, she went for NRM. She went through. You're a lawyer. Walubiri is a lawyer. Hamza, my good friend, is a lawyer. Ominu is a lawyer, allegedly. You know? So, you know, so there is a district where I got 4 votes against Walubiri's 1 at the final elections. The one person who voted was he's a member of his cabinet. The results that came, you know, was a different group. The chairperson, that gentleman did not deliver those things to Kampala. A new set of elections came, we got I think 6. They decided to donate 1 vote to somebody. And it's allegedly got 0. So I can go on and on this thing. So that's only the 5 thing that happened. In Uganda, unfortunately, under Uganda People's Congress, I did not know it would ever happen in my lifetime. And by that, I feel very strongly about it.
And
so just to conclude, so that's what happened. So this happened, and people thought I would go anywhere. No, I'm not going anywhere. So I challenged by the declaration of results, for the benefit of this person, I'm not answering this person alone.
No, yeah.
I'm answering Ugandans, and I'm also answering young people, and I'm also answering political leaders. So really what happened is that when it came to telling of results, neither I nor any of my agents were involved. I asked the leader, a senior person who was a member of the electoral commission. He said, no, Joseph, when the telling time comes, we shall have you and your agent. It wasn't. Results was declared through Zoom. That Zoom thing, my assistant was given a Zoom thing in time. For me, I go to Zoom thing, it's like 10 minutes to the end. So meaning, until today, I've never seen any of those things. We've never sat like this. I said, this election of a UPC president, you want to do it as if it's an NRA election for is the RRC one thing in the Luweru bushes? Seriously? So, and then they thought that apparently that I would get frustrated and leave this thing. And then number two, some people thought that, well, I love UPC too much to talk about Republican. No, I love UPC too much to allow it to be used by a group of dubious individuals. And particularly because I know UPC is the political party that the Ugandans are waiting for with the burden to provide the leadership in terms of ideas and ideals, and to work with everybody else, even if not the majority party, but ideals for the long term, to provide the future of this country. I can't leave it go dubiously in the hands of, this kind of stuff. So I took a position then, I went to court. This matter is in court. Ironically, I'll cut it short. From I hinted it earlier, from 2020 March 21, last year there was a hearing in September. A judge, a judge said he was going to declare, to issue the verdict judgment on 9th of December. I am still waiting. So we are literally waiting for December
this year?
Last year.
Up to now?
Up to now. This was on September 13th. The judge told us at Treaty House that he was going to issue judgment on the 9th of December last year. I'm still waiting for results. So it's not about me. It's about Walupiri and the funny things they did and whatever is being holding back the judicial systems. So what am I saying? I'm saying that if this matter is resolved, I hope it will be resolved that, and the evidence is there, that I'm declared leader of the party. I'll bring together everybody, including Jim Akena, including my sister Betty, but I'm simply saying if you're NRA, you're NRA. But the point is, we need to reconcile and come together, people who are willing to be part of a team and a port. But beyond that, the majority of Ugandans are not the current members of UPC. The majority of Ugandans are young citizens like yourselves who are waiting for a direction and waiting for a political direction and for political leadership and political sets of values to join. The majority of Ugandans are young Ugandans who are out there. Those are the future, and those are the people I want to come to UPC, which is clear, which is uncompromised and detached, and rather than clear with sets of values to take this country forward. And those are the people that I'm trying to work. I've been trying to train young, fresh, non-suspecting young Ugandans, and there are many, and I'm delighted I'm doing that. So that's what I'm trying to do. But just for the purpose of this, so
you could take it all together with a conclusion.
My case, my case is that, and I've got the evidence. But number two, I think I did something major by asking for a permanent injunction against Jim Akena for the purpose of this person, in case the person is UPC. So I've asked for a permanent injunction against Akena, and that if that ruling is made, it should be the basis of that. Since Court of Appeal ruled that Jimmy is not president, a fresh election should be held. So Jimmy should stop presenting himself as a leader. And the Ugandan media, particularly those media who are NRA leaning, who call Jimmy president, they're doing it deliberately because they're doing it from Jimmy and Mr. Museveni. They're not doing it for the interests of Ugandans. Jimmy is my brother. I came back with Jimmy in 2005. I did not escort him. I came back with him. You see what I'm saying? Yes. So, and we've been working, we're working very closely. We parted ways on as far as the issue to do with Mr. Museveni, policy and strategy. And that one, as far as Museveni is concerned, is not negotiable. And I don't want to pretend about it. And so that's my thing with Jimmy. In which case that means, therefore, that happens, and Jimmy leaves the Uganda House, which is the party headquarters, because he's also occupying it by force. He pushed Olara away in a manner which is very confusing. Party members are quite divided because some people were supporting or opposed to Olara, so they agreed with, they supported what Jimmy did, not because Jimmy was doing the right thing.
Only because they didn't want
Yes,
to.
yes. And I think that's wrong, So once this is done, we've got a new leader, the leader who occupies Uganda House. I am telling you, Rogers, in the event that I'm president of Uganda People's Congress and in Uganda House for 18 months, you will see. You will see what happens in this country. You will see what happens in this country and this party. You will see hope on this continent.
You say your parting shots.
My parting shots are these. Parting shots. No. That is possibly timely. That this country possibly needs more politics than less. It needs politicians rather than people who are using politics. It needs Uganda People's Congress to be reclaimed from bondage, to have a leadership, to have a sense of clarity and sense of purpose, or our values of what we stood for, starting with the Ignatius process in the 40s and 50s and what we did, hence leading to things like the cooperation and everything else that we're talking about. It needs a situation in which alternative political parties, for whatever reasons, they believe that our values are not consistent with theirs. In a democracy, there will be people who are right-wing, right-leaning. I don't know where NUP is. I don't know where FDC is. I don't know where ANT is. Museveni tells lies that they're multi-ideological. I don't know what multi-ideological means. So, let political parties come with their sense of values. Debate with the Free Uganda People's Congress, Let's be in these spaces. I'll be quite happy to sit here. Patrick sits there. Robert sits here. My brother Mugisha sits there. Mr. Museveni can sit next to me since whatever we can sit here and talk as political party leaders. Have a conversation over tea. Me, I'll provide the tea. For us in UPC, we are not mean. What he told me, Joe, for us, when you UPC, when we cook food and put it on the table, that becomes Uganda's high table. So I'll provide the tea. We sit and we talk about this country. Let's talk about its past. I know some people think we'll try to avoid it. We talk about the terrible past of the 60s, terrible past of the 80s, terrible past of the 70s, and Museveni also, let's talk about the terrible past of the 90s when you guys were banning northern Uganda and whatever. So no, let's talk about the genuine terrible past and good past. Yeah. Let's talk about the realities today, and let's have a consensus. Thankfully, all these leaders, I'm sure all of them are parents and grandparents, including my good brother Nobel. So let's sit around the table and talk while you Ugandans are watching. Let Ugandans decide which of our ideas are most persuasive. They join that political party and organization. They give it the privilege of a mandate to govern. And when that party governs, you govern with humility. That thank you, citizens of Uganda, you've given us a chance to, deliver what we believe in as our programs, and then wait for the next 4 or 5 years to elect or diselect us. That is what we need to do. And in the unlikely event that there's a loser, and there will always be a loser if there are 5, 6 candidates, losers, congratulate the other ones, back at the other ones, call them our brother and sister, and we clap together, and together we rebuild our country. That is what is needed. It's not about the constitution. It's not about funny law. It's not funny order. You talk about law and order. Museveni talks about law and order, but he talks about order and ordering people to whip people's sons and daughters. That is bad manners. That's not what this country wants.
Okay. Thank you so much. From where we started from, you mentioned, and you just hinted about it, that what we need are politicians, politics.
Politicians and political leaders, yes.
Political leaders who are, doing politics, not using politics.
Yeah.
I think that was a very important thing, because I think most people use politics for other things, masquerading as politicians, but apparently a politician is one thing different from someone who's in politics. So that is the best, one of the things I've gotten for this whole conversation. If you've not understood that, please go back and watch from where we began from. You'll come and
they can inbox me.
Yeah, you'll come and thank me later. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir, for giving us of your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, always.
Yeah, and for the ladies and gentlemen to be with us, the lady on camera also, Lillian, thank you so much also for making sure that this also happens and goes out there to these people. That is all we have for you for today. We'll be right back here, the same time, same place, Monday evening next week. Have a good night.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.